In September 1978, I would make an unusual move for a career officer. I left Richard Holbrooke's office and accepted an assignment to be loaned to the governor of Iowa, Robert D. Ray, and would pick up and move to Des Moines from Washington, giving up a likely high-profile follow-on job with Holbrooke. But there were two issues that were front and center on the East Asia Holbrooke agenda in 1978 that I was part of and witnessed, but didn't really conclude, but would have some continuing involvement in Iowa. The first were Vietnamese refugees. We started to see in 1978 that there was some additional new movement of refugees out of Vietnam. It was slow at first. Refugees were trying to get out on boats or any way they could sneak out of the country. But the United States had accepted about 130,000 refugees from Indochina in 1975 and said, that's it, close the door, no more, we've done our part, we've done our share, we've accepted all these 130,000 refugees. They're in the US. Holbrooke, another wonderful friend of mine named Lionel Rosenblatt, was activist in our bureau about refugees, but they could never get either the Secretary of State or the White House to be interested enough to take on what was considered to be, could be a significant political problem of bringing more refugees into the country, and could be a political issue affecting the president's reelection. Whatever the calculation, no more refugees were being accepted, despite Holbrooke's efforts, my efforts, Lionel Rosenblatt's efforts. Second issue going on was about movement toward China. Now, improving relations with China seemed to be on the agenda. Secretary Vance had made a trip to China. Leonard Woodcock, who had been with in Hanoi, was now the head of the U.S. liaison office in China. Holbrooke was very interested, and with the espionage case having such an impact, it really put U.S. Vietnamese, any possible movement there in the deep freeze. And so the focus turned to China. And in regard to China, the National Security Advisor, Zbigniew Brzezinski, and with Dr. Michael Oxenberg, a member of his staff from the University of Michigan, were really carrying out a whole secret negotiation with the Chinese, which they kept from the State Department. They kept from Cy Vance, and they kept from Holbrooke. And I remember when one of their moves and taking step forward and having secret meetings and became apparent, I was there when Holbrooke exploded, and he was talking to Brzezinski and screaming at him on his phone in the office. He was so upset, he's standing up, screaming, saying, President Carter personally committed to me that I would be involved in everything about China. And Brzezinski, I didn't hear what Brzezinski was saying because Holbrooke was just holding the phone to his ear, but clearly was not giving any ground. And as it would turn out, Brzezinski really had taken hold of the relationship. And I had gotten to know Oxenberg when he came to the NSC, having myself just been at the NSC, so we sort of spoke the same language. So I had a channel to him and we could exchange some messages, but it was bitter. And so as I was leaving September of '78, they were in the last few months towards establishing diplomatic relations at the beginning of January 1st, 1979. So here in 2019, we would be celebrating 40 years, 40th anniversary. I was in Beijing for the official reception to celebrate that moment, celebrate that event. But I was at the other end. I was there watching and witnessing all of this taking place in the State Department until September 78. My wife and our 3-year-old son and got in our 1974 Triumph Spitfire and started driving on I-80 West from Washington back home to Iowa.